Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all our distinguished guests, industry leaders, members of the Madras Management Association, members of professional associations, colleagues from Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, members of collectives, and all those gathered here this evening. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural edition of the Super Lecture Series. May I respectfully invite our distinguished dignitaries to kindly occupy the dais for the commencement of the proceedings. Sri Bish Ashokan, former chairman, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. Sri Ashwin Mahalingam, professor, Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Madras. Sri S. Shankar, Managing Director, Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited. Sri Rohit Kumar Agrawala, Director Finance, CPCL. Sri P. Kannan, Director Operations, CPCL. Sri S. G. Venkatesh, Director Technical, CPCL. Retired Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar, now Executive Director at Madras Management Association. Sri Lakshmi Narayanan Duraisamy, President, Madras Management Association, will be joining through the VC. Sorry, Sri Lakshmi Narayanan Duraisamy. And through video call, we have Venkataraman Ananta Nageshwaran sir. May I request everyone present to kindly rise for the CPCL song. To mark the beginning of today's program, we will now proceed with a traditional Kuttuvalakku lighting ceremony, symbolizing knowledge, wisdom, and enlightenment. May I respectfully invite the following dignitaries to kindly come forward and do the honors. I request all the dignitaries to kindly come forward.
You can call director Shankar. He will start with the opening.
We now invite Sri H. Shankar, Managing Director CPCL, to deliver the opening remarks and formally introduce the Super Lecture Series. Sir, may I request you to kindly address the gathering?
Maybe introduction.
Mr. H. Shankar, Managing Director of Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, is a seasoned energy sector professional with over 3 decades of experience in the oil and gas industry. A mechanical engineer with an MBA, Mr. Shankar has had key leadership roles in IOCL and gained international exposure with KNPC. Known for his focus on refinery operations, project execution, innovation, sustainability, and safety, Mr. Shankar continues to steer CPCL towards future-ready growth.
Distinguished guests, today, in fact, I'm not supposed to be the opening batsman, but because our president of MMA is quite tied up, but he'll be joining us shortly. So I'm playing the role of an opening batsman and trying to set the context for this super series of lectures that we would be having starting this year. My fellow directors on the dais, as distinguished speakers, Mr. B. Ashok, Mr. Professor Mahalingam. We have also the Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. Anantha Nageshwaranji, also connected through our net here. And all the ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished members from the MMA, I'm really overawed by the kind of attendance that we have seen here from all the different walks of life, media, my collectives, the Honorable Dr. Ramalingam, he's here. And then we also have these children, the siblings, Mr. Uma Mahesh and Srinivasanji here. They are our ex-CMD's children. And I really do not know where to begin with, but it is really a privilege to be addressing this distinguished gathering at the inaugural session of Super Leadership Lecture Series that we have started. The first theme for this year we have started with is Public Sector Leadership in Nation Building, from legacy to future readiness. That is the kind of topic that we have taken, because when the country is actually moving towards a very different transition now, as we are advancing to becoming one of the developed nations, and how the public enterprise can contribute to nation building, that is the reason why we have chosen this special theme. So this, I want to start with Professor Dr. APJ Abdul Kalamji's saying, which says that dreams transform into thoughts and thoughts result in action. So with this kind of a background, I should give you a small brief background about how CPCL has really thought about the dreams and how we have transformed these dreams into real actions. The story of CPCL is in many ways actually a kind of a dream that our legacy leaders have thought about, have conceived how it should be. Starting from the time that 1965, when this CPCL was conceived as originally, as you can say, it is a Madras Refineries Limited, and over a period of time, it has transformed to Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited. But the history of MRL, over a period of 35 to 40 years thereafter, it becomes the CPCL. So the history of CPCL is remarkable because the first unit which came up in 1969, that was a 2.5 million metric ton refinery. And that refinery, if you say, was a landmark, because during the time when the technology was not that high, the kind of project management skills that we are talking about today, it is not something that we have really seen those days. But the remarkable thing about it is the refinery was commissioned within a period of 27 months. And just to imagine, like a grassroots refinery coming up from zero, the base level, we have to construct a grassroots refinery in 27 months. Today is also a major challenge with so many technological tools that are available with us, so many project management tools available with us, the kind of expertise that we have in the construction and the engineering business. All these things, you really fade away when we look at how the first refinery was commissioned. But over a period of time, the refinery also has seen a lot of expansions. And today we are very proud that we are at a 10.5 million metric ton refinery. And we are the only refinery in Tamil Nadu. We are not only catering to the energy requirements of the state of Tamil Nadu, but also to the neighboring states of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala also. And this, if you see how the refinery has been built, what are the kind of legacy that our leaders have carried when we were building this, when the environmental consciousness was not that extent during that time, CPCL has come up with the first sulfur recovery unit. So that is how we talk about ourselves when we talk about what are the new things that we have done. So if you look at also today we are talking so much about artificial intelligence, we are talking about the digitalization, but way back in 1984 itself, we have talked about moving away from the analog series to a digital series. We are the first among the refineries in India to have commissioned the digital control systems, the DCS, which is the distributed control system, and also the advanced process control system, which made us to optimize our operational requirements also. Also, when Chennai was going through a very bad time with regards to water scarcity, in 1980s, we were the first refinery or first in the Asia to commission the sewage reclamation plant. We commissioned it in 1984, being one of the pioneers in the industry and the first in Asia to commission a sewage reclamation plant in 1990. Thereafter, we also expanded our reach towards a desalination plant. We were the first in the public sector enterprises to have commissioned our own desalination plant. So right from 2009 onwards, when we commissioned our desalination plant, our refinery is, we're proud to say, that zero groundwater, zero river water, and we are totally a refinery where we do not consume any water from the ground or from the river. So that is the kind of legacy that we are talking about. Also, today we are talking so much about the renewable energy. When you look at the kind of renewable energy basket of CPCL, way back in 2007, we commissioned our first windmill farm in Dindigul. We commissioned a plant where 7.6 megawatt of the renewable energy was available to us. And this renewable energy, we wheeled it back into our system so that the desalination plant can be totally operated with this. So whatever we talk about green energy, green water, we were the pioneers in that direction also. And today, when we are talking about the fuel qualities, BS4, BS6, all those things were very, very easy for us to really accomplish. We did the BS4 before time. We did the BS6 fuel quality also before time. And then we ventured into new areas like lending a hand towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, where we developed special fuels for the defense sector in the form of JP5, which is used for fighter jets. We commissioned the JP7, which is used in the scramjet engines. We also developed special fuel, which is required for the ISRO, which is called the ISRO scene. So when we talk about all these things, you can say not on one side, we have touched the lives, we have transformed our refinery on various facets of life. And these are not really small isolated achievements. They have been well thought out milestones in the growth of CPCL. And they remind us of a very timeless truth. It goes like comfort and success seldom live together in the same house. So this is a saying where we can say the pioneering achievement of CPCL journey. We can see that how we have been able to embrace the change, how we have been able to think about the new areas where we can venture into, and what are the things that we can transform our lives. One more very interesting thing, ladies and gentlemen, that I wanted to bring to your attention is about the ecosystem. It is not that you grow on your own. CPCL, right from the beginning, has been conceived as a refinery where you develop your own ecosystem around which the entire community can also prosper. So if you look at CPCL's portfolio and products, you can see that there is a very seamless interchange of products as a feedstock to the neighboring industries. The Manali Industry Association is a very, very strong example of this, where you can work together in harmony and everybody gets to gain. When one particular industry comes up, then how the other industries are also able to get moving along with it. So you set the momentum, you set the path, and all the other industries also will be a part of your growth journey. So this is what gives us a very unique position, that we are the first in the refinery also among the Indian refineries where a polytechnic college has been set up, our own polytechnic college, where there are 3 different streams of engineering application. And I'm very happy to say that it has crossed the silver jubilee. And today more than 100%, about 100%, all of them are able to be placed. So We have also developed a R&D center, which is a purely, you can say, a kind of an application-centered R&D, where the products that are designed, where the products that are thought about by the R&D, they go seamlessly into the market. We develop all our R&D network in such a way that these really cater to the requirement of the public, where the refinery can also be directly involved in converting the R&D ventures into real product. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of leadership that I'm talking about. That brings me back to the topic about why we are talking about this leadership, where public sector, how it can contribute to nation building. It is not the growth journey of an individual company, but it is the growth journey of the entire system. So in this journey, I would like to pay a special thanks to our Shri Ashok ji, who during his time as chairman of Indian Oil and CPCL, during the time 2014 to 17, he was the chairman at the helm of Indian Oil, and CPCL being a part of the subsidiary of Indian Oil. So he was our chairman, and he's the one who actually conceptualized that we should expand, we should build really a bigger refinery. Our growth refinery should move to a higher level. It should really jump to a different level altogether. So that is how the Kaveri Basin Refinery and Petrochemical was conceived during his time. Thank you very much, sir, for that. We are still working on that, but I'm sure that it's only a matter of time that this also becomes a major driving force down south. Also, I want to pay a special mention to our Dr. Ramalingam ji, who was a CMD during the time 1993 to 95. During his time, the CPCL has seen tremendous development in all the areas of operations, and his special area of attention was the marketing field. And you can say in CPCL, he was the person who drove the direct marketing as a theme, as a thought. And then he is the one who actually thought about why CPCL should not be directly involved in the products that we are producing, why we should always be like looking at bigger players. We have our own special skills, especially with respect to wax, with respect to what we say as paraffin wax, which is a special field. In addition to that, there are other items that Dr. Ramalingam has thought about. So thank you very much, sir, also for being here. And this really serves as a very powerful reminder to all of us that we are the people who actually pioneered so many areas. And one special name that comes to our mind, everybody in CPCL will talk about Mr. V.R. Deenadayaluji, who during his tenure as chairman and managing director during 1982 to 1990, he is the one who actually left a very indelible mark in the growth journey of CPCL. He is the one who actually supported the CPCL's journey into such an extent that we went beyond boundaries. We really went to areas where we have never thought that we would be doing. He had the foresight to look at various areas, not just the refining operations, about building infrastructure, about building facilities. So the kind of count that I can come up with will be very, very small when I talk about it. But I would like to honor his legacy and reflect on this enduring impact that he has left on us by inviting you to a small AV that we have compiled in his honor. Please.
A leader whose foresight left a lasting imprint on the erstwhile Madras Refineries Limited. Today's Chairman Petroleum Corporation, under his stewardship, transformative foundations were laid. The GE with Chevron for formation of Indian Additives Limited and the establishment of the Kaveri Basin Refinery at Inaugural. The inauguration of the wax plant and the commissioning utilized catalytic cracking unit, expansion of refinery capacity, and the establishment of a distributed digital control system. First, on Indian refineries, new departments such as profit planning, optimization, marketing, and operational health services reflected a forward-looking vision. Shri Deenadayalu championed learning and institutional growth through initiatives such as the Refinery Engineering School of Training, R&D Center, establishment of CPCL Polytechnic, the building guest house, and a new corporate office. It was the culture he nurtured, one of professionalism, teamwork, responsibility, and confidence. Today, as we look upon the enduring strength of CPCL, we honor Shri V.R. Deenadayalu, a visionary leader whose legacy continues to guide, inspire, and endure across generations.
So, ladies and gentlemen, so while we take this immense pride in our legacy, the leadership ultimately requires us to also look forward, keep exploring new areas. And as it is said, a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are meant to be built for. So if you look at that particular way of life, where true institutions should be going, and we are not people who are going to be safely anchored. We want to move forward. We'll keep exploring unknown territories. We'll keep venturing into areas which gives us much more challenges as we move forward. And this legacy of facing the challenges, moving out into new areas, we are all really blessed to have such good leadership with us. And in this direction, the future of our industry will be shaped by a lot of new things. Like there is energy transition, sustainability. We are talking about circular economy. We are also talking about advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There are too many things that are now going to be the areas where CPCL will be moving. But one of the important things is that organizations that really adapt will thrive. And those organizations that lead the adaptation are going to define the future. And that is what we are doing. And we are now going to be also in our Diamond Jubilee last year, we redefined our own mission. We have redrafted our mission statements so that we are aligned with the future. We want to be the future ready in the leadership cycle. We want to be the people who move around in these directions where this intelligence, the technology and everything will be the driving force as we move forward. And in this direction, we have also done a very beautiful framework of mission statement. And these are going to be our driving forces for the future. And we really look forward to take CPCL to new heights now. And as the CPCL's evolution is continuing, I would like to say that throughout this history, CPCL has continuously reinvented things and done things which have been very disruptive to our own way of working. And from refining to petrochemicals, we have moved from analog to digital. We have totally transformed our water management. We have totally moved into the sustainability. We produce normal fuels which are required for everybody. We also produce the fuels which are required in the defense sector, which are very specialized areas. So with this, all this kind of background, we thought now that there is a need for us to be really along with the common man. We have to be seen by the common man. We have to touch the lives of each and every person directly. So this gave us the reason why that we had launched our Super as a brand for our retail marketing. And we are now ventured into the retail outlet business. And very happy to tell you that in the month of March, we actually launched our first retail outlet at Nemam, which is in Tanjavur district. And we also launched our first Coco, which is the company-owned company outlet on May 20th, 2026 at very close to our refinery at an area called Mathur. And this is a very major milestone in CPCL's history because from building the sustainability drives, from building the water conservation measures, from digitalizing our entire operational areas, now we are moving into an area where there is going to be a direct customer interaction. So that is the area that we are moving, and it requires a lot of courage really to step into this unfamiliar territory. But we are willing to face this task. We are willing to take up this as a major challenge. And as the saying goes, comfort is the enemy of achievement. So we do not want to bind ourselves in the comfort zone. We want to move forward. This launch of CPCL Super is a very special example for us. It is something that will take us very closer to the customers. And I'm sure that there is going to be a lot of interaction with everybody in Chennai, in the country. We are launching this across the country in about 300 outlets. But to begin with, we have started in our hometown. So that's how we are. So just I will invite you to a small AV about this journey that we have undertaken. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, let me just give you a background about this the super lecture series that we are planning. This is the inaugural edition of that super series we are going to have for the next 10 years along with MMA. And this lecture, we expect that there will be a lot of churning of ideas. There will be great interaction with the people. We'll be able to get new ideas from the market. We will be able to select some good initiatives that we can take it forward. So in this matter, that is the reason why we have a very different group of super people who are going to be the speakers here. So the super speakers will give us an idea about what are the new areas that as a public sector we can drive, what are the new areas that we can take forward for the growth of the nation. And as the nation grows, I think CPCL will also have a great area to move forward, because as the Latin proverb goes, fortune only favors the bold, and we are very bold in this matter. So we do not want to take any half steps. We want to move, we want to jump, we want to leapfrog into the next area. And also, if you look at how Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam has said, that excellence happens not by accident, it is a process. We are in the process of building up the beautiful chain of events for us to move forward. And CPCL journey all through has been a proof of that aspect. And going forward, we will be again demonstrating it to the next generation also. And as a public enterprise, we have a very special responsibility to the nation. We have a special responsibility to the society, and we are very much aware about it. As a responsible corporate, we are very much in line with that particular requirement. So as we reflect our 6 decades of performance, we want to now go into the next area. That is how we have evolved this topic also, that we have to honor the legacy. We also want to inspire the leadership, and we want to build the future. So that is how we have built this special topic for the day. And with this, I thank you all once again for being here and being a part of this lovely journey that we want to take together with all of you. And my special thanks to the great, the super speakers who are going to be addressing this gathering here. And we look forward to a very good interactive session. And we look forward to a very beautiful set of ideas that will emerge and give us the impetus to move forward. Thank you very much once again. Thanks all.
Thank you, sir, for those insightful opening remarks and for setting the context for today's evening. It is now my pleasure to invite Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar, Executive Director, Madras Management Association, to deliver the welcome address. Please, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed my proud moment today, and a great privilege for me to deliver the formal welcome address this evening. Very rarely maybe this is one of the first event MMA doing with a public sector undertaking. That's why I must thank Shankar for putting the initiative and putting in place, because the relationship between public sector organizations and the corporate world is very, very important for the growth of the nation. I consider it an honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Anant Nageshwaran, Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India, and who has taken, in spite of his busy schedule, is tried to address online. And Anant Nageshwaran not new to MMA, so every time he comes, our members will walk miles to listen to him. He's one of the finest thought leaders today in India. It's indeed a privilege to have you with us this evening, sir. Mr. Ashok is a former chairman of Indian Oil Corporation and Chennai Petroleum Corporation. Again, he's not new to MMA. He came here when he was addressing the Indian Oil. And I've seen how much he's revered by all the people from the oil industry and also Indian Oil and CPCL. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor to have you with us this evening, sir. We are looking forward to eagerly your address. And Shankar, what to say about Ms. Shankar? Very warm welcome to you, sir. When we put the proposal team, and I think the thing moved so fast, and with this team, so much is coordination done. We are indeed privileged to host this event jointly with CPCL. I think it's going to be super hit, actually. So it will fit the name, what has been rightly coined by Mr. Shankar and his team, actually. And Ashwin Mahalingam, Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, IIT Madras, he has kindly agreed to deliver the keynote address. Again, Ashwin is one of the finest brain today in IIT Madras, who travels around the world, put so many things in place. He will see it during his intro. And we are indeed once again grateful to CPCL, Mr. Shankar in particular, for the initiative in instrumenting the annual endowment lecture leadership. And MMA has got some outstanding annual endowment lecture, which you do with a couple of organizations, including Punch Veterans, Ishwaran and Memorial, quite a number of them. Because this endowment lecture brings in some different perspective. And our members, we got some 9,000 plus members, and that really adds a lot of value to the members who are there. Different type of people coming and talking. And now, as much as you, I am also eagerly awaiting to listen to the distinguished speakers, super speakers, as Mr. Shankar mentioned this evening. And I must also mention here, welcome the members of MMA, all the participants from CPCL who are come in a big number, dignitaries from IOCL. We work very closely with IOCL. Mr. Ashok is also part of our committee, and we do a lot of work together. And all other dignitaries who has joined us, former chairman of CPCL, so it's a pleasure to have you with us. You are also not new to member, you are always a member. And it's indeed a great privilege to welcome once again all of you. Now, with this, we are also going to go for a very, very interesting thing before Mr. Anand Nageshwar is telling. We'll take a minute, and thank you, Shankar, for putting together. Maybe you would like to exchange the MOU, what has been done. Maybe we can come into that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One of the significant milestones of today's event is the formalization of the partnership between CPCL and MMA for the annual Super Lecture Series through an exchange of MOU. May I invite Sri Purushottam, Chief General Manager, Corporate Planning and Business Development, CPCL, and retired Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar, Executive Director, MMA, to kindly come forward for the exchange of MOU. Thank you, sir. We look forward to a fruitful collaboration between CPCL and MMA through the annual Super Lecture Series. Before we proceed further, I request Director Finance, Director Operations, and Director Technical to kindly join among the audience and continue to grace the event with their presence.
Before we proceed further, a quick note for all participants. You may submit your questions for your distinguished speakers by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen. The questions received will be taken up during the Q&A session after all the speakers have completed their address. I repeat, you may submit your questions for our distinguished speakers by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen. We encourage you to actively participate and make the most of this opportunity.
It is now my distinct honor to introduce our chief guest and inaugural speaker, a distinguished economist who has worn multiple hats as an academic, author, teacher, and public policy advisor. Dr. V. Ananda Nageshwaran is one of India's most respected voices on economic growth and development. He currently serves as the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India and continues to contribute significantly to the nation's economic discourse. We are privileged to have him address us virtually this evening. May I now invite Dr. V. Ananda Nageshwaran to deliver the inaugural address. Please, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. And let me begin with a word of affection. Chennai Petroleum was my employer in the 1980s, 85 to 1990. And that was very early in my working life. In fact, Madras Refineries Limited was my first employer. I owe my seeming success in life, which is obviously a matter of subjective interpretation, I owe it to the experience and exposure that my bosses, V. Swaminathan sir and G.L. Srinivasan sir, provided me with. I remain very grateful to them. Of course, it was truly instructive to observe at my relatively junior level the vision set for the company by the then Chairman and Managing Director, Sri V.R. Deenadayalu sir. It is very fitting that this event today is dedicated to his memory. He dared to think big and over long horizons. The kind of qualities that today's corporate leadership, public or private sector, needs to emulate. So this is not a lecture I give from a distance, although I'm giving it virtually this evening. For me, it is a homecoming. It's a privilege. Therefore, I thank Mr. Shankar, the Managing Director of Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, and retired Group Captain Vijay Kumar, the Madras Management Association, for the opportunity to speak on this occasion. I seek your understanding and forgiveness that I may not be able to stay for the Q&A session this time. Maybe hopefully on another occasion when I'm there in person, I'll be able to take the Q&A. But today I have to be excused after the speech is over. I hope you will understand. The institutions that Deen Dayal sir and his generation built were not built for a quarter or a year or even a 5-year horizon. They were built for the long run. That is the thread I want to pull tonight. My subject is the role of public sector leadership in India's journey to a developed nation by 2047. I want to make one argument and make it very plainly. The defining advantage of the public sector is its ability to think and act over long horizons. That is exactly the capacity India most needs now and most lacks elsewhere. Public sector leadership is not a relic of an old economic model. In the world we are entering, it is an instrument of national strategy. Let me set the scene honestly. India is not in a crisis. We are at a fork. The world that allowed us to grow for 3 decades has changed in ways that are not temporary. The era of cheap global capital is over. Long-term interest rates in the advanced economies have crossed 5%. Money that once chased yield into emerging markets now has alternatives at home. Every dollar that comes to India must clear a higher bar than before, and great power competition has hardened. The major economies are organizing trade and technology around strategic interest, not efficiency. China has become a manufacturing power without precedent and is now writing rules designed to lock supply chains in place. The physical world has reasserted itself. We are in a long commodity tightening rooted in 15 years of underinvestment in resource capacity. One choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, which a petroleum company in this room knows better than most, can raise energy costs, fertilizer prices, and free trades at the same time. The peace deal that has been announced in terms of its framework, therefore, is very welcome for an oil, natural gas, fertilizer importing country like India, and I hope it lasts. This is the environment in which India must keep growing fast and keep reforming faster. In 2 recent articles, I argued that the Indian industry suffers from a chronic ailment. I called it the short horizon. Our private sector has long underinvested in research and development. The reasons are not mysterious. A vast domestic market lets companies grow comfortably without competing at the frontier. Our corporate sector financialized early. It learned to price financial returns over productive investment before it had built deep manufacturing capability. And 15 years of one shock after another, the financial crisis, the pandemic, war, and tariffs have taught firms to defer irreversible commitments. To ask a company to fund a decade-long research program in such a climate is to ask the company to plant an orchard in a forest fire. The result is a private sector that captures domestic demand but remains technologically dependent. It is a consumer of intellectual property rather than a generator. That is a comfortable position today, but it is a fragile one tomorrow. Now, here is the point that matters for this evening. The short horizon is a disease of incentives, and the public sector, if it is led well, is structurally immune to this incentive problem. A public enterprise is not run for the next quarterly result. It is not managed for the vesting period of a stock option. It does not lose its nerve in the third generation. It can take on projects that gestate over 15 years and pay back over 50 years. That is not a weakness to apologize for. In the world I have just described, it is a rare and valuable freedom. India's public sector used that freedom once before and used it well. The refineries, the steel plants, power stations, fertilizer units, and heavy engineering works. These were built because patient capital was willing to do what private capital will not, or private capital would not have done then. CPCL itself is part of that story. In fact, it was the leadership of Sri Deenadayalu sir and that of Sri Swaminathan sir, under whom I had the privilege of serving for more than 3 years, was instrumental in bringing Chevron's technology and management expertise to the joint venture that gave rise to Indian Additives Limited. Being a small part of those negotiations was an invaluable experience for me personally. The task before public sector leadership is now not to relive that history. It is to apply the same long horizon logic to a new set of problems. Let me name those problems concretely. The first is resource and energy security, and this audience needs no persuading. Modern manufacturing, semiconductors, batteries, defense systems runs on molecules. The short video that was shown clearly captured that. Copper, nickel, rare earths, ammonia, and above all, energy. India is structurally short in most of these things. No molecules, no manufacturing. Public sector leadership must build strategic reserves across the critical commodity spectrum, not just crude oil. And it must accelerate nuclear energy with a seriousness our present pace does not necessarily fully reflect. Nuclear power is immune to choke points and to fuel price swings, and it provides the base load that a nation of fabs and data centers will need. The physics is settled, the economy is improving, and this is a near-term priority, not a distant aspiration. The second area is research and development. If the private sector discounts the future too heavily, the public sector must be the patient investor that does not discount the future so heavily. Public enterprises and public research institutions should be where frontier capability is built and then shared in energy, materials, and in process technology. This is the long horizon investment that India's strategic ambitions require and that the market left to itself will not necessarily fully provide, but may even underprovide. The third is the nurturing of small and medium enterprises. India's strength will not come from a handful of large firms alone. Germany's industrial depth rests on its Mittelstand, thousands of mid-sized engineering firms with deep technical capability, sustained by patient capital and a culture of quality. India needs its own version of Mittelstand. Here, the public sector plays a specific underused role. A large public enterprise is an anchor customer, a standard setter, and a technology teacher to the smaller firms in its supply chain. When a public sector unit commits to building a domestic vendor ecosystem, it can lift hundreds of MSMEs to higher levels of capability. That is how an industrial base is built, not by decree, but by demanding, paying for, and by developing better suppliers. There is a second dividend here, and it is the one our young people care about the most. India needs some 8 million new jobs every year. Frontier technology will not provide them at scale. The entire information technology sector employs only a few million people. The jobs are in manufacturing, construction, skilled trades, and MSMEs that cluster around large enterprises. A public sector that deepens its supplier base is also quietly an employment engine. That is not a side benefit. It is central to the social compact of a developing nation. The fourth is speed, and it is the hardest. The pace of decision-making that served us in a calmer world may become a liability. The long consultation, the wait for consensus, the deference to processes over outcomes, these are no longer feasible. In a fragmented world, the gap between recognizing an opportunity and acting on it can decide whether it is seized or lost for a generation to come. Public sector leadership must learn to compress timelines and to name the entropy of process when it masquerades as caution. Bring these together and you arrive at the larger purpose. India standing in a multipolar world will not rest on diplomacy alone. It will rest on industrial capacity, on the ability to make things, to supply things, and to hold positions in global value chains that others cannot easily replace. Strategic leverage is underwritten by what you can build. A country that depends on others for energy, critical minerals, and frontier technology will have little room to negotiate. A country that builds depth in these areas negotiates from a position of strength. That is the deeper meaning of self-reliance. The public sector is one of the principal instruments through which such depth is created. Let me close where our own tradition would have me close. There is an idea in the Indian philosophy, Preya and Shreya. I wrote about it in the economic survey. Preya is what is immediately pleasant, the easy path, the comfortable choice. Shreya is what is genuinely good, the harder path, the more consequential path. The Kathopanishad tells us the wise choose Shreya. Public sector leadership faces this choice every day. The Preya path is to administer what exists, to avoid risk, to let the institution coast on its legacy. No one will be blamed for it, but the Shreya path is to use the long horizon that the public sector uniquely possesses, to invest, to build, to take responsibility for capabilities that will mature long after one's own tenure has ended. Thiruvalluvar said it in 2 lines 2000 years ago. Muyarchi Thiruvinai Akum Muyatrinmai Inmai Puguttividum. Effort begets prosperity, idleness, ruin. The leaders we honor tonight understood this. They treated their position as a trust, not a privilege. They built for a country they would not live to see fully arrive. That is the leadership India needs again, not louder but longer in its vision in the public sector. The journey to a developed India will not be completed in any one single tenure. It will be built as the best public institutions are always built, by people willing to plant trees in whose shade they will never sit. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you. I hail the idea of behind the CPCL super conversation, and I hope to participate in future editions as well. Thank you, and over to you back in Chennai. Thank you very much.
Just a moment, sir, and we are separated by distance. Thank you for joining Delhi, and it's always an inspiring thing to listen to you. We listen to you almost every day in some podcast or television. As a token of our appreciation on behalf of CPCL and MMA, we would like to present a digital memento, sir, which we'll get it sent to you. Can I have the digital memento on screen, please? This is what we are trying to do, sir. What we do on your behalf.
It's very nice.
And, we present it to all the poor children studying in different schools, a lot of books and what they need. We try and give it to
Wonderful,
them.
wonderful. It's very heartwarming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Once again, grateful for joining us online, delivering a very, very inspiring thing. And it's a befitting for this occasion today, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is a distinguished academic and thought leader whose work has contributed significantly to infrastructure development and institution building in India. Dr. Ashwin Mahalingam is a professor of civil engineering at IIT Madras with expertise in infrastructure planning, project management, and public-private partnerships. May I now invite Dr. Ashwin Mahalingam to deliver the keynote address.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Dr. Ashwin Mahalingam, professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Madras, is an expert in infrastructure project management, public-private partnerships, and technology-led infrastructure development. An alumnus of IIT Madras and Stanford University, Dr. Ashwin has extensive academic, research, and entrepreneurial experience. Dr. Ashwin is also the co-founder of Okapi Advisory Services and has contributed to several national committees and professional forums.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'd first like to thank both CPCL and MMA for inviting me here for a variety of reasons, but also because they use this very nice photo of mine, which still makes me look like I'm 30. So, but it's always a pleasure coming here for two reasons. One, whenever I come here, the room is full. So CPCL and MMA have this ability to draw people in. But also, we always seem to talk about a topic that is not on the beaten path. Right? I think this is a fascinating topic to look at, the legacy that the public sector leaves, and we've never really talked about it. So I really want to thank and congratulate the organizers for coming up with these thought-provoking ideas that we want to discuss. Normally, it is not a good idea to speak after Professor Anantha Nageshwaran, because he makes such eloquent points that what comes after is likely to be a letdown. But in this particular case, I'm actually quite happy that I'm speaking after him, because I think he made some very, very relevant points that I want to piggyback on. And I think one of the critical points that I took away from what he said is this notion of decision-making timelines, right? So the private sector is very often caught in this quarter-to-quarter mentality, and therefore you've got to show relatively immediate results to your shareholders, stakeholders. The government has slightly longer timelines, perhaps 5 years or so, assuming it's a stable government. If it's not, then even lesser. But then again, you want to sort of hurry your decisions so you see results in that time frame. Whereas both the academia and the public sector can actually afford longer timelines. And in a minute, I'll tell you why I think longer timelines are very critical to us achieving supremacy and sovereignty and and things like this. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how academia and the public sector can work together to achieve this goal of an Atmanirbhar Bharat or a Vikasit Bharat, primarily because of this ability to think along these same time horizons. So to start with, I have only one simple thesis, right, that underpins my talk, which is that if India needs to be a developed country, if we need to achieve Atmanirbharta and all of these kinds of things, we need technological supremacy. I think there is absolutely no two ways about it. Now, when I say, and of course, I'm a professor from IIT Madras, so you would expect me to say that, right? So, but it is true, and it's something that I believe. Now, when I say technological supremacy, there are many ways in which people can think about it. Certainly, I think it's very important for us to be operationally efficient. We need to sort of deliver whatever we deliver to the highest standards of quality and so on. But I think we also need to control technology. I think we need to have an insight on where technology is going next. And that, I think, is going to be the game changer. Today, I would argue that as a nation, we are not in control of our technological destiny, right? I'll just give you some examples. People today cannot stop talking about AI. Okay, it is the next big thing. It is the first word out of everyone's mouth, and it gets worse. If you go to Silicon Valley, and if every alternate word out of your mouth is not AI, then your existence is deemed worthless, right? So today, everything is about AI. Now, when you think about AI and you think about what are some of the, what firms come to your mind when you think about AI? Anthropic. Okay, I'm glad people said that first. I'm a big fan of Anthropic. What else? Well, Claude is Anthropic's model, but OpenAI is another one. Then Google, Microsoft with Gemini and Copilot and all of these, right? So today, when you look at the AI debate is actually being controlled by organizations that are not in India, as a result of which we are having to play a little bit of catch up. Many of us use these models, but then, of course, we're always worried that somebody might turn off the tap. So there is, of course, this endeavor to bring sovereignty into AI. And recently, we do have our own sovereign model, which I think is called Vikram, if I remember correctly. I think it starts with a V. But we are playing catch up in that sort of domain. And that is therefore restricting our ability to provide cutting edge solutions that are at the edge of AI. Although we have several, I think, very relevant challenges that we need to solve in India. If you go one step further and you say, what is the challenge? Why aren't we able to build these models? One of the simple reasons that comes out is that to build artificial intelligence models, you need computational capacity, right? You need these GPUs that as people call them. Elon Musk in one cluster has more GPUs than all of India put together, right? So again, we are constrained by the fact that we don't have enough computational capacity to be able to develop these kinds of models. And that again is a function of not necessarily being a leader in not the AI race this time, but in the semiconductor race, right? Where again, the major semiconductor companies happen to be either in the United States or in the Netherlands or in Taiwan and some of these kinds of geographies. So the fact that we are not at the cutting edge, right, has in turn led to a situation where we are playing catch up, and therefore we are sort of at the mercy of other organizations, which is a position that we don't want to be in. So the question then is, how do we sort of invert this? Okay. And to me, when you look at these kinds of cutting edge technologies, they are at step 3 of a 3-stage process. Step one is basic scientific research, right? Step 2 is taking that scientific research and making it more applied. And step 3 is taking applied research and making it what we call translational, which means people in industry, the common man can actually benefit from these technologies, right? So this is sort of the value chain. You look at AI, it's the same story. It's rooted in a set of mathematics, which came out of essentially university ecosystems. That mathematics was the basic research that led to applications that now has led to translation into these kinds of models that all of us use. So when you look at this value chain, you have academic institutions on the one hand that are supposed to do this kind of basic work, and then a whole variety of public and private sector organizations that can then help translate this. And I think one of the challenges we've had in India is that this entire value chain has been a little bit broken. We've not been doing that kind of cutting edge scientific work in our universities, as a result of which we've not been able to necessarily move across the value chain. And again, if you look back and say, and I just said this, when you look at the United States, which is clearly, superpower in this area, you'll find that if you go back 40, 50, 60 years ago, a lot of what we're talking about was research that was happening at a Stanford, at an MIT, and these kinds of places in departments of mathematics or in electrical engineering. And over a period of time, 40, 50 years later, you have these kinds of organizations coming up. Go even further, you go back to maybe about 100 years ago, where one might argue that several Western European countries were superpowers at the time. Again, it was built on fantastic institutions that were doing fundamental work on nuclear physics or whatever it was in Copenhagen, in Groningen, in places in Germany and things like that, right? So, and if you go even further back and you think of a time where India was potentially a world leader, right, several hundred years ago, you will find that that coincided at the time where we had universities like Nalanda and Takshila, where back in the day, knowledge was emanating, right? I mean, there are several areas in science, in mathematics, in medicine, in philosophy that essentially originated out of India and went all over the world. The number system is one of the, I think, the most important but least talked about innovations that came out of India. And again, at a point where everyone was looking towards India, saying what technology is coming out. So I think we have to somehow go back and recapture this, right? We again need our universities to be the Nalandas and Takshilas of that age, start doing this sort of wonderful work. And then we need organizations that take that work and translate it into practice. Then we start leading the world in technology, okay? So now I guess the question I want to come to is, A, what is preventing us from doing this? And B, what is the role that the public sector has played and can play in this transformation? And to sort of just, explain this, I'll take the simple example of IIT Madras. So we don't talk in the abstract, right? We actually talk in terms of an actual case study. And of course, a case study I know well because I've been teaching there for 2 decades. I was a student there as well, right? Does anyone know when IIT Madras was started? 1959, exactly, right? So IIT Madras was started in 1959. When IIT Madras started, it was started completely with support from the government of India. So the government of India would give a grant, and that grant would be used to run the university's activities, all right? And if you look at the activities that the university really ran in its first few decades of existence, a lot of it was related to teaching, primarily undergraduate teaching, right? So essentially we had a bunch of smart students and we would teach them, and those students would then go, many of them of course went abroad, some of them stayed back and used what we taught. But there was very little R&D that was really coming out of what we call IIT Madras version 1.0, all right? Maybe about 25, 30 years ago, I think all around, there was a recognition that universities could be places where R&D could happen, right? And that was a recognition that was felt by the universities themselves, saying, look, if we need to be relevant in this era, we need to do R&D. It was a point of view that the government had, saying our universities need to fuel this R&D boom. It was also a view that the public and private sector had, saying there are certain problems that we may be unable to solve, that with the help of academic institutions, we could potentially solve. So that led to what I would call version 2.0 of not only IIT Madras, but several universities, where we started doing a little bit of research. And in this process, the private sector's role and the public sector's role, more importantly, was very critical. So in a lot of cases, and this is true of CPCL, this is true of IOCL, of many of these organizations who came to an IIT Madras and said, I am having issues with, for instance, my reverse osmosis treatment process. Is there something we can do with regards to filtration techniques and things like this? What this started fueling was a way in which people started thinking about research, thinking about innovation. Up until that point, it was really, let me come into the classroom, please teach me, I will absorb that and I will go out. Now it sort of became a philosophy of, let me come in, let me listen to your problems, let me try to see if I can apply my mind and try to see if I can come up with solutions. So this is phase one of innovation. And there were quite a few, not only were there quite a few problems that were solved, but more importantly, this catalyzed the development of intellectual capability to innovate, right? And I think that is very, very important. We always complain that in many ways, the Indian education system stifles innovation because a lot of it tends to be rote memorization, right? How do you get out of that trap? You get out of that trap by giving people a problem that they cannot memorize, right? That no one has solved and saying, solve it, right? And over a period of time, that capacity develops. So in version 2.0, the public sector in many ways played a very important role in catalyzing this capacity. But the public sector was not alone here. Government was also doing this. We had the Department of Science and Technology and others. The private sector was also doing this. They had similar problems. And while we improved our capability and there was more research coming out, we are still very far away from getting to that world-leading position. Which brings me to where I think we need to go next, which is version 3.0. And version 3.0 is actually being the people who now invent the next generation of semiconductors or AI models and things like that. What is preventing us from doing it? I think there are three factors that are necessary. One is, do we have the right kind of potential among students entering these kinds of institutions to do this kind of work? There, I think the answer is hands down, yes. Right? You just look at the kids coming out today, coming in, forget the IITs, go down to tier 3, tier 4 universities. The people coming in are fantastically sharp. I think they're just more exposed. By and large, I think they have access to more information. The capability of people to do research is never in doubt. And that has never been in doubt in the past as well, because, the joke is that if you go to an Intel or any of these OpenAI or Anthropics or whatever, who do you see sitting there, right? You see people from India sitting there, right? It's not that somehow when they crossed the ocean, their sort of neurons started flaring up. It's the same capability. So the capability exists in terms of the people who can actually do the research. Do we have people who can guide that research, right? Do we have people who can set that vision? And again, I would argue that the answer is yes. I think we have many visionary thinkers, both within academia as well as in the public sector and elsewhere, that can set these kinds of agendas, right? So human resources is not the problem. So what is the problem? The problem is really resources, right? We don't quite have the kinds of resources to do the kind of work that we aspire to do. So at IIT Madras, we had somebody who published this really wonderful paper in the #2 journal in the field. And we went and said, what would it take for you to publish in the #1 journal? Right? And they said, it's simple. We know exactly what we need to do. But I have a microscope, and this is something to do with protein structures and things like that. I have a microscope that can measure things at some nanometer level resolution. But those guys sitting at MIT and Harvard and Princeton have a microscope that can measure at angstrom level resolution. So therefore, naturally, they're able to say more interesting things about that protein than I am, not because they're any smarter, but they have a device that can give them that resolution. If you give me that same device, right, I could do the same kind of work. So this is a repeated story that we now need to really augment our R&D capabilities by resourcing them. We need to look at cutting edge equipment and all of these other appurtenances that come with this. This is where I think in recent times, the public sector is playing a fantastic sort of role. So just to give you continue on this example, one of these microscopes is something called a cryo-electron microscope, a cryo-EM. For the first time in India, at IIT Madras, we now have one of these microscopic laboratories sponsored by a public sector organization, right? In this case, through CSR funding and things like this. Why would this organization choose to do this? It goes back again to the time horizons that we're talking about. Is this device going to achieve a technological breakthrough in 3 months? Absolutely not. Is it likely to achieve a technological breakthrough in 5 to 10 to maybe 15 years? Very possibly. And you need somebody with that kind of long-term vision to now invest in these kinds of resources that will then allow India to do a brand of research that it has not done before. And that brand of research is what will now create technologies of the future where we are no longer dependent on someone else, but others are dependent on us, right? And, I was just doing the calculations before I came here. But again, just to take the IIT Madras example, the public sector in the last few years has invested something like 150 crores in IIT Madras, a bunch of companies, including CPCL and IOCL. In fact, with CPCL, we've done some phenomenally interesting projects, including sanitation projects in Nagapattinam, but also other projects related to assistive devices and medical technology and things like this. And also with IOCL in the area of water and health, we've done but these are not just projects. These are not solving problems. These are setting up resources that will allow us to develop the technologies of the future, right? This is something that the private sector will find very, very difficult to do because the time horizons are long. This is something that government might also find difficult to do because their resources are constrained and there are several other opportunities. We all know that the proportion of R&D investment in India is one of the lowest compared to GDP, right? This is something that the public sector is uniquely positioned to do. And it is something that the public sector very quietly, very unnoticeably has been doing for a long period of time, to the point where you can go to a number of these academic institutions. You find now a series of laboratories, assets, resources that did not exist before. This is now starting to attract a breed of people that we did not have before, who are saying it is now worthwhile coming to India to pursue my research career. There are now people saying, I want to sort of pursue research as a career. And I'm very confident that in the next 10 to 15 years, there's the Science Museum in Calcutta. If anyone goes to that Science Museum in Calcutta, they have an exhibit on Nobel prizes and Nobel laureates. And there's a statistic that says that it takes about 14.1 years from the time of the discovery for a Nobel Prize to be awarded for that discovery on average. All right. Which means if we are looking at a Nobel Prize in India and people say, will we get a Nobel Prize next year? Then you should look back 14 years or 13.1 years and say, did we do anything cutting edge 13.1 years ago? And the answer is probably not. But today we are actually doing this kind of work, fueled by the fact that the public sector and academia now have that match in terms of time horizons, which I'm very sure, we're talking about 2026 today, that by 2040 or by 2047, which is a nice milestone for all of us to look at, we are definitely going to have several Nobel-worthy ideas that come out of India. Those are going to essentially be the ones that help drive us to be leaders as far as global technology development and the economy are concerned. And that is, in my view, going to be fueled by academia on the one hand, working hand in hand with the public sector. So I just want to conclude by saying, in my view, I think the case for public sector, or the evidence that the public sector has been able to support India's growth towards sovereignty is very strong. And but it is also important to realize that we have to maintain this momentum over the next 10, 15 years to get to a point where we can look back and say the decisions that we made then have now brought us to where we are here, right? So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your patience. Unfortunately, as Professor Anantha Nageshwaran said, we have a visitor that we're hosting, so I'm also going to have to run without being able to stay for the Q&A. But I will be back at MMA very soon, I'm sure, and happy to take as many questions then as possible. And if there are pressing questions, people are very welcome to write to me, and I can see if I can answer them. But thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Mahalingam, for that insightful address. Your address has set the perfect tone for the meaningful discussions ahead. We now move to our special address. Sri B. Ashok is
Yes.
We now move to a special address. Sri B. Ashok is a distinguished industry leader who has served as chairman of Indian Oil Corporation Limited and has played a pivotal role in strengthening India's energy sector through transformative leadership and strategic vision. May I invite Sri B. Ashok to deliver the special address.
Mr. B. Ashok, former chairman of Indian Oil Corporation Limited and Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, is a distinguished energy sector leader with over 3 decades of experience in the oil and gas industry. A mechanical engineer from College of Engineering, Delhi, with a management qualification from India, Mr. Ashok has had key leadership roles across retail, overseas operations, and corporate strategy. Mr. Ashok is widely respected for his contributions to Indian Oil's retail transformation, global operations, and downstream energy sector thought leadership.
Thank you very much, MMA, Mr. Shankar, CPCL, for inviting me to be part of this wonderful evening. It was really exhilarating to listen to Dr. Anantha Nageshwaran and, of course, Professor Ashwin. And to be following that would be tough. But the subject is very close to my heart, and it was really brilliant to listen to these people who probably are not truly from public sector, even though I came to know that Dr. Anantha Nageshwaran started his tenure with CPCL. It's very nice to know that. And though he has that the public sector feel within him, it's nice to hear from outsiders good words about public sector, because normally I say that, having led and spent a lot of my career in Indian Oil, I used to say, Indian Oil is like an administration department. When things go wrong, only people will notice you. When things go right, nobody even notices you. So that's the normal position. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me again. Mr. Shankar, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, and colleagues from CPCL, my erstwhile colleagues, and the directors, and Mr. Ramalingam, nice to see you and to be here. It's indeed an honor to have been invited for this endowment lecture and also recall the memories of late Sri Deenadayalu, a doyen amongst the industrial leaders in Tamil Nadu, and whose contributions to the development of the petroleum and petrochemical cluster in Manali and the state have been immense. We could not have gathered at a more challenging time than now for these discussions, as the global events since February 28th have totally shaken our pretensions about how the world is expected to operate.
Modern conflicts are no longer confined to territorial borders. They disrupt global supply chains, fracture energy networks, and destabilize entire economies. Their impact extends far beyond immediate human costs, altering infrastructure and long-term growth. Having spent my entire career in the oil and gas sector, issues like climate change, air pollution, emissions, besides the primary job of easing energy access for consumers, have been at the forefront of our business for a very long time. My talk on public sector leadership may seem a little skewed in the flavor and favor of the sector. So I seek your indulgence and understanding. Though I know a lot of CPCL people are here, but for the rest of the people who are MMA members and who are not used to public sector, please seek your understanding that I'm talking too much about the public sector, more particularly about the oil and gas sector. The topic is about public sector leadership in action, driving transformation, innovation, and national growth. So talking about driving transformation, the ongoing energy transition is one of the greatest transformations the world has ever seen. However, geopolitical conflicts around the globe are currently threatening to nullify much of the progress we have worked hard to achieve. For the better part of the last 7 decades, the global energy economy has been built on the quiet assumption that the Hormuz Strait, which Professor Nageshwaran also mentioned, would remain open. On the morning of 28th February this year, that assumption ceased to hold. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, a thin channel of water separating the southern coast of Iran from the Musandam Peninsula of Oman. Through it passes roughly 20 million barrels of crude oil, which is about 4 times what India consumes, or equivalent along with a fifth of the world's traded liquefied natural gas every day. The ongoing conflict has brought marine traffic through the strait to a near halt. By any historical benchmark, the disruption has been unprecedented. The Arab oil embargo in 1973 lasted 5 months, but did not close the strait. The tanker war of Iran-Iraq conflict between 1980 and 88 reduced but did not stop traffic. The drone strikes on Saudi Abqaiq facility in 2019 cut output for a fortnight before recovery began. In each previous instance, the duration of supply shock was measured in weeks. The current crisis, however, has run for over 3.5 months and seems a crisis without a closure. Hopefully, there should be some closure with today's announcement, but let's see. Though at first it was not thought to be so. Even if we believe, as we often say, that this shall also pass, it's quite difficult to comprehend the length of the impact in the global energy landscape. Even if it stops as of today, the length of the impact is going to be very, very long. For India, the exposure has been acute. Almost 40% of the crude, 90% of LPG and LNG transits the strait. Whatever the geopolitical interpretation of the day, that means we may support this way or that way, the operational reality was unambiguous. The single largest artery of energy supply to the world's third largest energy consumer, that is India, has ceased to function. Iranian authorities have intermittently extended bilateral safe passage arrangements, but this has been erratic, and of late we have even seen death of Indian sailors. The crisis has once again brought to focus the oil and gas public sector leadership in action, their impact and influence, although in typical style behind the scenes. It is quite ironical that this sector has always been tested for its crisis management skills quite frequently. Recent memories of COVID, when supplies of LPG had to be sustained despite lockdown, or when refineries were asked to support oxygen supplies to hospitals, the multiple natural disasters across the country. I mean, many of you may remember even the Chennai floods, or times of conflicts, whether it was Operation Sindoor or the present Mid East crisis. So the oil industry has always faced these crises and continued to do their job so that the Aam Aadmi or the common consumer is not put to difficulty. In a global context, when you look at this, the global language for energy transition has been changing over the last year or so, even before the current Middle East crisis. While transition is still happening, the leadership is more concerned about energy security, technologies, and resilience. Economic and industrial policies are now the main drivers rather than the classical integrated energy policy. Governments now focus more on local content, job creation, trade measures, subsidies, and tax credits to achieve economic and strategic goals. There is a race to build factories more than solar or wind farms. There is an understanding that no single technology will solve the energy transition, and a mix of solutions are needed. Many players and governments are withdrawing from being climate champions to securing the businesses and jobs of the future, whether it is batteries, hydrogen, clean tech manufacturing, or data centers, or as the professor just mentioned, AI. Geopolitical tensions have put energy security at the top of the agenda for most energy import-dependent countries. Resilience also means economic and social stability in terms of affordable access and system resilience in the face of new threats such as climate, cyber, and supply chain disruptions. So how different is the leadership challenge in India? India's energy challenge is quite complex. It faces simultaneous scale and transformation. Most countries deal with only one. They either deal with scale or they deal with transition. In fact, most countries don't deal with the scale that India deals with. Despite the great strides in renewables and alternative energies, the core energy industry, including demand for oil and gas, is still growing in absolute numbers. It would continue in the path due to economic growth. Energy infrastructure creation remains critical for the country's progress. The push for increased strategic storage for crude, LPG, LNG is one of the many such infrastructural requirements. India has been the fastest growing large economy in the world for the last few years, yet we still face the monumental task of lifting millions out of poverty to reach a global average standard of living. To achieve that phase, we need significant economic development, which naturally requires a lot more energy. In my view, there is no single form of energy today that does not have a flip side. Consider the environmental impact of mining rare metals, powering EVs with coal-based grids, or diverting scarce land and water resources for massive solar parks and hydrogen production. Mistaken choices can have real social and economic consequences in the long run. We need a deeply balanced approach. Biofuels, biogas provide immense hope in our country. There is a massive untapped potential for distributed energy production and usage in rural India, particularly through biogas generation solar appliances. More importantly, the efficient, optimal use of energy and the deliberate development of technology to mitigate emissions are our best ways forward. So, is there a leadership paradox in this? In India, energy security, affordability, and sustainability often compete for attention. Hence, for energy leadership, it's less about choosing the ideal future and more about responsibly bridging the present to the future. The trade-offs between energy options have to be sequenced. The Indian energy leaders need to be pragmatic visionaries, ambitious but deeply grounded in realities. In the short term, energy security and affordability are non-negotiable. In the medium term, efficiency and diversification, and in the long term, decarbonization pathways. The strategic clarity makes decision choices, including capital allocation decisions, better. However, even with such clarity, the role of leadership in Indian energy sector is not an easy ride. The environment in which the leadership operates, especially the large public sector companies, is firstly close to public interest. No better example than the present when the companies are forced to sell fuels below cost to protect customers. Secondly, their decisions are constantly second-guessed. That is, after a decision is made, people tend to reevaluate, question, or criticize it, often using information or outcomes that were not available at the time the decision was taken. And thirdly, Any silence creates distrust. Hence, strong leaderships explain these trade-offs transparently rather than pretending that conflicts do not exist. It is difficult to have perfect answers, but being honest about priorities and timelines helps. The challenge for Indian energy leadership is to push organizations decisively towards renewables, biofuels, and alternatives without destabilizing core oil and gas operations that remain critical. Transition must be additive rather than substitutive. Core oil and gas business not only generates the revenues, it also pays the bills. Ask any of the state governments where from they are getting their revenues. They will say it is because of taxation of fuels. Transition business, on the other hand, needs patience and protection, probably a lot of subsidies as well. So mixing these up can be dangerous. Energy security and reliability, affordability and economic growth, sustainability and transition are all important. The challenge of the leadership is not about choosing amongst them. It is about keeping all of them moving by calibrating the pace differently through their decisions. The leadership is also about the nature of the industry. Large Indian energy companies are asset heavy. Most projects are also high investment, have long gestations. These companies, especially the PSUs, are perceived as very risk conscious or even risk averse. So how does the leadership unlock innovation and change in these organizations? There is definitely no shortage of talent or ideas in these organizations, as the professor also remarked. What they are short of is really the psychological safety. Innovation struggles not because people don't know what to do, but because they are afraid of the consequences of trying. In asset-heavy, safety-critical businesses, risk aversion is understandable. But leadership should make a distinction between operational risks, which must be tightly controlled, and innovation risk, which must be encouraged. When leaders are not able to establish a clear distinction, the organizations become more conservative. Innovation fails not because of lack of ideas, but it fails because of fear. Removal of fear by leadership hence best encourages innovation. So what should be the capabilities of India's next energy leaders? While the scenario is also already changing, the next generation of energy leaders in India will face a very different landscape from their predecessors. They will not be managing steady-state businesses or assets alone. They will have to manage transitions, contradictions, and heightened expectations. Some critical capabilities are: number one, systems thinking. Energy decisions sit at the intersections of policy, geopolitics, technology, finance, environment, and society. Leaders who optimize one dimension will struggle to lead. The ability to see second order and third order consequences will be critical. A 360-degree and a global view, and the ability to connect the dots and read patterns intuitively beyond just data would be very important. The second is the stakeholder empathy. This would become a core skill. The ability to engage with government, investors, employees, communities, and the public, often with competing expectations. Leadership will be less about command and more about persuasion, influence, and achieving alignment. The third one is about personal resilience and strength of a leader. The pace of change, public scrutiny, and ambiguity can be quite exhausting for a leader. Leaders need to stay grounded, ready to make decisions with incomplete information, and remain balanced when there are no perfect answers. The challenge of attracting and retaining talent in an era when the relevance of the industry is questioned is another challenge. This indeed is a very real concern, and leaders should not be dismissive about it. More so when one considers the strategic and critical nature of the industry. While in India, getting the quantity in terms of numbers is not currently an issue, quality is. Even though the professor had good words for the tier 2 and tier 3 colleges and their orientation, the young students, but quality in larger quantity is definitely an issue. The bigger threat is also about retaining the talent, as most organizations would acknowledge. Younger professionals today are asking deeper questions, not just about what they do, but why they do. Leaders and organizations should see this not as a threat, but as a signal for them to evolve. It is necessary to position the industry honestly. Leaders need to acknowledge that oil and gas will remain critical for India's growth and energy security today, even as the industry takes the responsibility for transitioning to a low carbon future. Talent is more likely to be attached by purpose and relevance rather than labels. It's not in which company do I serve or so, but whether the job that they are doing is really of relevance. When young professionals see themselves as contributing to nation building priorities, whether it's affordable energy, reliability, and a responsible transition, they engage more meaningfully. We have any number of examples from the recent past about what such purposiveness can do in terms of motivation and on-ground delivery excellence. The PM Ujjwala Yojana, for example, which has brought about a social transformation by providing access to clean energy, that is LPG, to cover over 100 million underprivileged families, including far-flung tribal hamlets, in record time, is a striking example. It was based on an outstanding on-ground delivery model that was driven by purposiveness, motivated executives, and a clear direction from above. Similar is the engagement during natural calamities or other crises. We always wonder what really makes people, even risk their lives when things are pushed to a crisis. Because they see the sense of purposiveness, that's why they do it. CPCL was a typical example. At least a few years back, a couple of cyclones directly hit the refinery. I don't remember the name. I think what was the, Yeah, okay. So I remember one of our colleagues had to climb a huge tower and then close a valve so that the refinery doesn't have a safety incident. And even in that wind speed of nearly 100 kilometers, people were prepared to risk their lives and climb up. So that is what makes jobs with purposiveness that very different. Retention, however, depends on their experience. Young people stay when they see learning, mobility, and voice in the organization. They want exposure across traditional hydrocarbons, renewables, biofuels, new technologies, etc., and not be boxed into legacy silos. Leaders should create a career pathway that reflects future energy ecosystem, not just the past structure. Culture also matters as much as strategy. If organizations remain hierarchical, slow, and intolerant of questioning, young talent is bound to disengage regardless of compensation. Leaders must make curiosity, dialogue, and experimentation safe, especially in technically conservative environments. In fact, some of us have flowered in our organizations precisely due to the freedom to try out that even the environment of the 70s and 80s provided. Unfortunately, too much of structuring the jobs, if I dare say, in the name of technology, has been a block to the creative instincts of those who want to try. Attracting and retaining talent in oil and gas is not about convincing the next generation to think like their predecessors. It is about creating an industry and leadership mindset worth believing in. When leaders demonstrate credibility, openness, and commitment, talent follows. The next generation will not join oil and gas sector for what it was, but for what it will become. Sharing experiences in developing leadership capabilities is something I want to do. The ability to think through second and third order consequences does not arise from intelligence alone. It is built over time and a combination of exposure, deliberate training, timely role placement, self-development, discipline, and humility. It would be a mistake for organizations to assume that such capabilities which naturally emerge with seniority. They must be consciously and systematically developed. It's not necessary that this is valid only for the public sector. It is equally valid for the private sector. Today, we find people who are excellent in their own silos, but who actually lack the organizational leadership capability. The need is even more pronounced in public sector, particularly in energy domain, where organizations are strategically critical and operate at an enormous scale with decisions that have far-reaching economic, social, and geopolitical consequences. Drawing from my own experience, both while progressing through the ranks of a PSU and later while being involved in the selection of senior leadership, I would like to share a few reflections. The first is the debate between functional depth versus enterprise perspective. There is a persistent debate between functional expertise and rounded exposure. High potential leadership talent must be pushed out of functional silos in their early careers. When individuals spend decades in one or two domains within a large organization, they tend to optimize locally while missing systemic impacts. I'm not saying the domain expertise is not required, no? But there are some people who need to become organizational leaders. There are many people who would like to be functional leaders, but there are some people who would have to be organizational leaders. I'm only saying or making a case that where an organization identifies the potential of a person to be an organizational leader, his or her pathway needs to be different. So high potential leadership talent must be pushed out of functional silos early in their careers. When individuals spend decades in one or two domains within a large organization, they tend to optimize locally while missing systemic impacts. This is often why highly experienced executives perform well in functional leadership roles, but fall short in enterprise leadership. While not every talented executive aspires to lead an enterprise, it is the organization's responsibility to identify those with such potential early and provide them with the right opportunities. The second thing is a deliberate investment in learning and exposure. Identified high potential talent must receive structured learning inputs over time, including participation in external programs, conferences like this. These experiences broaden perspectives and help build networks beyond the organization. Unfortunately, during cost optimization drives, such investments are often the first to be cut, despite their long-term impact. At the same time, individuals also must proactively seek visibility through presentations and speaking opportunities and external engagement. Exposure to diverse leadership roles is another important thing. Large organizations offer multiple leadership positions, and potential leaders should be deliberately rotated and through them to assess readiness and build capacity. This exposure develops real business judgment. A healthy balance between line and staff roles is essential to gain both implementation depth and policy perspective. Too often, executives reach senior positions having operated only in one track, resulting in gaps in either ground level appreciation or strategic understanding. There's also a need for revitalizing mentorship. Historically, PSUs benefited from strong informal mentoring by senior leaders. Today, however, speed, technology, and workload pressures have reduced the time leaders devote to develop others. Yet the presence of the right mentor, someone who serves as a sounding board and offers perspective, is invaluable. I'm sure a lot of the old people will remember their old bosses because the bosses were willing to spend time, energy, and effort with them. But today, many of the leaders should think for themselves whether they are having the time to spend with their subordinates. I think the answer is a clear no. So this is something which organizations have to, I'm saying that everybody becomes very busy doing the things that they should be doing irrespective of their levels. So while mentorship is a global best practice, it remains very underutilized in PSUs. And then I'm also a firm believer in growing leaders from within. In my experience, developing top leadership internally is particularly effective in large PSUs. By design, these roles have limited tenures because it takes time for people to climb up the ladder. External appointees often spend a significant portion of their time trying to understand the organization, the complexities, its people, leaving little time to create impact. Conversely, excessively long tenures at the top can also be counterproductive as they block succession, dampen motivation, and push capable talent to seek opportunities elsewhere. Finally, leaders must develop personal humility. The willingness to say, I may be wrong, is often the gateway to deeper thinking. Leaders who surround themselves only with agreement risk seeing no further than the first order outcomes. Top leadership should also recognize the responsibility of developing the next generation of leaders. I'm sorry, it seems to be a lecture in leadership, but these are actually practical problems that at least I have seen in my career. So I thought it was a good forum for me to share some of these points. So in conclusion, we began by looking at how fragile our assumptions of the world can be. A narrow waterway has demonstrated the deep interconnect between energy, security, economics, and society. The PSU leadership, which is in the midst of managing this crisis quite literally in the hot seat, hence needs to be seen with a lens not merely by operational performance or financial outcomes, though both are absolutely critical for the very survival of the industry. However, a more holistic measure of the current leadership is in their ability to navigate uncertainty, balance competing priorities, and take decisions whose consequences may unfold much later. Leadership quality will be defined by the quality of judgment exercised in the conditions of scale, complexity, scrutiny, and constraint. India's energy journey is unique. Unlike many developed economies, our challenge is not simply transition. It is transformation while continuing to grow, industrialize, and improve the quality of life of millions. That really demands neither ideological choices nor technological dogma, but a pragmatic leadership anchored in national priorities. The question before us is not whether the future of energy will be different. It certainly will be. The real question is whether we build the leadership capability required to shape that future rather than merely react to it. The future will undoubtedly bring new technologies, new disruptions, and new uncertainties. While technology can achieve marvelous outcomes, it will always struggle to displace the depth of human capability, ethical judgment, deep creativity, and intuition. As we move forward, the real differentiator will be the ability to build institutions that learn, leaders who think beyond first-order outcomes, and cultures where innovation is protected than feared. If we can translate insight into disciplined, credible action, India will not only meet its energy needs, but define a transition pathway that is uniquely its own, responsible, resilient, and inclusive. This would in turn be a critical contributor towards driving transformation, innovation, and national growth. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your rich experiences and perspective. We have received several questions from the audience through the QR platform, and I will be reading out a few selected questions. The first question is, it is for Ashok, sir. The first question is, public sector enterprises today are expected to be efficient, innovative, and globally competitive. How can PSU leaders build a culture of agility and innovation within legacy organizations?
I thought Yeah, thank you for the question. I thought I actually covered that in my speech. Well, there is a common perception that probably PSUs are, they are not agile or innovation is not happening and so on. As I said, I mean, as long as the leaders can create an environment where the consequences of failure are not being questioned. While you don't put an organization into operational risk, as I said, if innovation can be encouraged, I think there's no dearth of talent in public sector. In fact, most of the private sector industries, at least in the oil and gas, whether it's the Reliance or the Nayaras or whatever you call them, most of them, I mean, even the father Ambani is supposed to have said that if I have to set up a big refinery, obviously I will have to develop on the depend on the public sector enterprise. The same is the case whether it's the steel industry or whether it's mining industry or things like that. The public sectors have been the people who are actually generating the talent. So there is no shortage of talent. The only thing is the leadership's ability to create an environment where innovation can flower. So I think that's what needs to be done. And it's more so now because our environment is not a stable environment and the business is not going to continue as usual. There's going to be a lot of change.
The question for you, Shankar.
Yeah, okay. The question is, what are the key differentiators of super outlets and how does CPCL plan to build? That's right. So, first and foremost, I would like to say is that the look itself is a key differentiator because normally you will not find this kind of a color combination. So, first and foremost is the looks that really go with any kind of attraction that is there for the customer. That is the first differentiator. Followed by there are a couple of things like we have planned to have the vapor recovery system built in on all the outlets. So that is going to be a differentiator because that will be leading to less of gases emission there, and it will give you a clean feeling out there. Secondly, we want to really take up the service as one of the major differentiators as compared to many other places. The idea is that the people should be having the feeling to come again and again. So that is where we like to bring the service as a major differentiator. And the uniform that would be worn by all the service attendants, it's all unbottled, it's all plastic recycled uniform that we are bringing in. So these are the main areas where we want to bring in. Of course, there will be electric charging that will be available. There will be another alternate fuel like CNG, which will also be coming in. So all these kind of facilities, and we want to concentrate on some of the NFR areas, that is the non-fuel retailing areas, as a key differentiator by bringing in a specific element of South touch that we want to bring there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your insightful response. And the final question is for B. Ashok, sir. How can PSUs balance their traditional mandate of public purpose and inclusive growth with the need for efficiency, innovation, profitability, and global competitiveness?
I can sense a little bit of an irony in the question itself because it probably assumes that public purpose and inclusive growth doesn't contribute to efficiency. Well, maybe one of the points which I mentioned are not within the control of the public sector at the moment, which is profitability. Because I mean, at some points of time, it becomes necessary that the greater good is looked at in terms of national priorities. So if the organizations were only focused on the profitability, probably today India will be suffering from scarcity of products. So there is a question, but I would say that even though public sectors are basically government owned and tend to be seen as government controlled in that sense, there is a lot of decision making which are independent of the government controls also, which are not seen. That's why even in my speech I said that the leadership of public sector generally operates behind the scenes. You don't see them as visible or as like a private sector enterprise. So there are a lot of opportunities within the public sectors. I mean, having served in the oil and gas, I can definitely say that there are a lot of opportunities within the public sector for improving their profitability as well, by focusing on certain profitable products for business. Like you might notice many of the free trade products, as we call them. You don't really look at a petroleum company only through the petrol, diesel, and LPG, even though they make up substantial volumes. There are hundreds of other products which are profitable, and where there is, if there is adequate focus, the public sectors can also make money. In terms of efficiency, I would probably say that the public sector is as efficient, if not better, than most of the private sector. Where they are constrained, if at all you call that, is as Mr. Vittal 30 years back said, these organizations suffer from the 3 C's. You know what those 3 C's are. I don't need to dwell on that. But the point is, whether these are really whether they become an excuse for lack of decision making, or whether decision making is really hampered. Many times, as a leader, I used to question my own organization, saying that what do we do, L1 tender, and so on and so forth. But the point is, the tender documents are not decided by somebody from outside. It is you and me who are making these documents, right? So we ourselves impose certain constraints on us and then blame our own procedures and process for hampering our growth. So there is a need for introspection even amongst these companies if they really want to take that as an excuse. But if you want to see an efficient company, public sectors are definitely efficient. In fact, the joke is that we are super efficient in terms of crisis. I don't think any company in the private sector can match the public sector when it comes to handling crisis. I don't want to take the names, but if you're only aiming for profitability, then companies will only do business where they make money and they don't look at public good. In the case of public sector, yes, public good is the purposiveness which drives the company. So we do what is necessary for the society. We do what is good for the public. And that is why even at times of difficulty, we go ahead and maybe sell products at loss and things like that. But the public also probably misinterprets them, saying that, no, you have made a lot of money, when the prices were very low and things like that. It is one way of balancing. You never see a public sector, declaring huge profits at any point of time. The government is very smart. So they always keep this thing, but one needs to understand that the large public sectors, especially in the energy sector, they have to spend a lot of money to create the infrastructure for the future. Because we are companies which build supply ahead of the demand. That has been the philosophy which drives our companies. So we need enough resources, we need enough money to build those things. So many times when there are criticisms that, during low prices, you are making huge profits and so on, which doesn't necessarily translate into the companies making money. Yes, governments sometimes play that role in terms of extracting that additional money, but that is enabling them to service during these times of crisis when really the consumers are being put to difficulty because of the global environment. I mean, we have not been responsible for what's happening around the globe, but we are facing the consequences. So this understanding probably to a certain extent has not gone down to the Aam Aadmi, and so people believe that public sectors are not efficient or they are not profitable and so on and so forth. Yes, it pains me when we see public sector stocks are being traded, not applicable to CPCL, but but the rest of the companies, for the assets that they have, for the operations that they have, for the scale that they have, the market doesn't recognize that as efficient, which is a painful point at this thing. But I hope leaders also need to do a lot in terms of the brand building and image building to improve that perception.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for addressing that question very clearly. Thank you, everyone, for your active participation. Now we move on. As a mark of our respect and remembrance, we are honored to have the members of late Thiru V.R. Deenadayalu's family with us this evening. May I respectfully invite his family to kindly come forward to receive a commemorative memento. I invite our respected MD to kindly felicitate the family with the memento. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. In recognition of the exceptional contribution of B. Ashok, former chairman of IOCL, I request our esteemed directors to kindly come forward and felicitate him. On behalf of MMA, I invite retired Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar to join us in felicitating Ashok sir. I request all the directors to come forward. Thank you.
As we approach the conclusion of this memorable evening, I invite retired Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar, Executive Director MMA, to deliver the word of thanks.
Thank you. I'm not going to be taking too much of time. I'm there between you and the dinner, but it's always customary that we must thank the people who have taken so much of pain to join us online, offline to address us. Let me first thank Mr. Shankar for putting this together to making a great evening and instituting this award, instituting this lecture. I'm quite sure is going to go for a very long way and most sought after endowment lecture today in one of the MMA's calendar of events. Thank you, Mr. Shankar. Yes, we'll do that, sir. The moment two more people, I have to thank them. And after that, surely we'll do that actually. Then my sincere thanks to Mr. Anand Nageshwaran for joining us online from Delhi and delivering a very inspiring address. Then Ashwin Magalingam, and he's again a brilliant, you could make out how good a professor from IIT Madras, and he could speak on the subject which is very, very relevant today, and especially public sector undertaking. And what to say about Mr. Ashok? He is a master class on leadership, sir. Your points, what you have said is really outstanding. And what you mentioned, public sector is one of the principal architects of Indian development journey. And when you mentioned that public sector do much more than private sector, I have seen both very closely. I totally agree with you in total, sir, that public sector is the backbone of the nation, which builds the nation today. If you have to get the aspiration of 2047, public sector is the one which is going to lead us the way. Then also thank all the directors who have joined us today on stage and making the event a grand success, and my team from MMA, and especially Siddharth and Bhatta and other MC from CPCL who have made this evening very flawless, smoothly conducted the whole show to finish on time so that you don't get delayed for dinner. And all the viewers watching this program live, thank you for the questions. Sorry, so many questions have come. We are not able to take more than 680 people who are watching online this program. I'm quite sure over a period, many more will watch it. And thank you for joining us online. Once again, thanks to each one of you for being here this evening and join us for dinner immediately after this event. Please kindly raise for the national anthem for the evening. National anthem.
Thank you everyone for your presence and active participation this evening. As India advances toward the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047, public sector enterprises will continue to play a vital role in driving growth, innovation, and nation building. We look forward to welcoming you again at the next edition of the annual Super Lecture Series on another theme of national significance. I request everyone to please join for the dinner. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.